For a staff report on 1470, we have Ms. Whalen and Ms. Walker. And if I can just announce at this point, at the conclusion of the public hearing on agenda item 11, I believe 1470, we'll be taking a break for members and staff and audience to get hydrated or nutrition or whatever you might need. So we'll be having a short break after the conclusion of the public hearing on 1470. Ms. Whaling, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Martha Whaling, staff to the Community Safety, Justice, and Reentry Committee. This is the policy briefing on Substitute House Bill 1470, which relates to private detention facilities. By way of background, in 2021, the state enacted legislation that defined a private detention facility as a detention facility operated by a private, non-government, for-profit entity with a contract or an agreement with a federal, state, or local entity. That legislation prohibited new private detention facilities in the state, and it required existing private detention facilities to terminate their activities at the conclusion of their existing contracts. Substitute House Bill 1470 before you today has four principal components. First, it requires the Department of Health to adopt rules in two different categories. The first category relates to the regulation of private detention facility operations for sanitary, hygienic, and safe conditions within those facilities. The second category of rulemaking relates to inspection. The Department of Health will adopt rules inspecting private detention facilities for food services and to test water and air. In addition to the Department of Health's rulemaking, the Department of Health may delegate food safety inspections to local health jurisdictions, and a second agency, the Department of Labor and Industries, is required to inspect workplace conditions and a detained person's work. The second component of House Bill 1470 imposes conditions on any new private detention facility contracts entered into after January 1st of this year, and those conditions are detailed in the bill report. The third component of 1470 creates a private right of action, a civil penalty mechanism created by the Department of Health, and it allows the Attorney General's office to enforce violations of the rules or the contract conditions. The final component of 1470 requires private detention facilities with contracts with local governments or state agencies to comply with the Public Records Act. And now I'll turn it over to Ms. Walker.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Walker, staff of this committee. Substitute House Bill 1470 addresses conditions at private detention facilities that are for-profit. It's my understanding that there are only 3 of these particular facilities in the state of Washington, one of which is a federal facility. The fiscal note that you have in EBB is a partial preliminary fiscal note. However, based upon the fiscal note prepared on the original bill, we do know that there are some costs that will remain constant in the substitute version of the bill. First, the Department of Health and the Department of Labor and Industries are client agencies of the Attorney General's office, and the AG has estimated costs of $108,000 in the 23-25 biennium and $78,000 in each biennium thereafter to provide legal services and representation to those agencies to assist in the creation of penalty regulations, assessing penalties, and establishment of administrative processes and rules. Secondly, the bill requires the Department of Labor and Industries to conduct inspections for workplace conditions and work undertaken by detained persons. According to the Department of Labor and Industries, their Occupational Safety and Health Division already has jurisdiction over the employees and conducts inspections at those 2 non-federal facilities. Also, L&I expects to be able to continue conducting inspections within existing resources. Lastly, the Department of Health is required to adopt rules governing private detention operations as it relates to sanitary, hygienic, and safe conditions. The Department of Health must also regularly review the list of food items provided to detained persons to ensure that specific nutrition and calorie needs are met for each detained person. The department is also required to collect civil penalties imposed on private detention facilities for failure to comply with the Act. The Department of Health assumes an initial cost of $94,000 in the 23-25 biennium and a cost of $70,000 each biennium thereafter to fund additional staffing and nutrition analysis software. There may also be additional costs related to rulemaking for the agency, but those costs are indeterminate at this time. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you both very much. Are there questions for Ms. Walker or Ms. Whaling on the bill? No questions. Thank you very much. Public testimony, Representative Berquist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one testifier. It's Hannah Warner. Hannah, go. Yeah.
Please begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Ormsby, members of the committee. My name is Hannah Warner, testifying on behalf of Columbia Legal Services in support of House Bill 1470. The substitute bill made several key changes, including consolidating oversight under the Department of Health. These changes reflect the engagement that we've had between local and state agencies to arrive at a more streamlined system of inspection and enforcement. This is also a smaller bill that covers fewer facilities. As a result, the substitute bill is more efficient in terms of enforcement and in terms of the funding impact. We urge this committee to move this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. And that will conclude the public testimony and the public hearing on Substitute House Bill 1470. And the committee is going to go at ease for caucus until 4:15. So we'll be back in a half an hour. We're at ease. The Republicans will be caucusing in the briefing room. Democrats will be caucusing in House hearing room C. We're at ease. Appropriations Committee will come back to order, and we will begin where we left off on the public hearing schedule with Substitute House Bill 1492 with Ms. Adams and Ms. Walker. Sorry for the delay.
Good afternoon. Edie Adams, staff to the House Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee. Substitute House Bill 1492